I really wanted to follow up on a bit more on this $1 million day. Because, I mean, it really changed your industry. It was the 4-minute mile. Nobody thought it was possible. And I think there's a lot of people at home that, you know, they want to change their life. They have a vision of what they want to make happen. And they believe it, sort of, but they never follow through. And so I'd love to kind of get a sense of how did you get to the point where, you know, you make $1 million in, you know, was it less than 24 hours?
Yeah, it was like 18 hours.
In 18 hours, you make $1 million. I mean, it's beyond most people's imagination.
Yeah, and I think up until that point, the industry, the kind of record or whatever, the big thing that was thought of was like $100,000 in a 24-hour period.
Wow.
So
you took it 10x.
Yeah, so it was August 17th, 2004. I'll never forget that date. One, because when I lived in Orlando at the time, there was a hurricane, Hurricane Charlie, that just annihilated Central Florida, cut out all my power. And I actually had to break my garage door to get my car out. Me and a friend drove from my place a couple hours north to where my parents lived to actually manage the launch day of that project that was happening like the next day. And it's pretty interesting. It's almost like divine intervention, because looking back on it, you know, no one knew for sure how great that day was going to turn out. Right. I, of course, believe big, and we can talk about that a little bit.
Right.
But we can walk a little bit.
Sure.
The neat thing for me was, and just reflecting on when that happened with the hurricane and everything else, was that I ended up getting to share that major day and accomplishment with my family, who was always very, very supportive of me, even when I was in over $100,000 of debt by the time I was 23 years old.
Right.
You know, they
trying to do this very thing, failing at it, right?
Yeah, you know, they had given me a little bit of money, and even when I was in a lot of debt, they gave me a little bit more money. Not a lot, but just trying to help me until they could no longer help me anymore, and I had to figure things out on my own just because they weren't in that position. But so anyways, just mentioning that, it was great to be able to share that accomplishment and have them be a part of it. My dad actually managed a little whiteboard that showed how many sales, you know, before before the whole sale started. I said, this is the goal for us. You know, we're going for $1 million in the launch day for 24 hours, because it's never been done anything like it. And so we wrote on the board exactly how many sales were needed to reach the goal.
So you broke it down.
Yeah, and every hour I'd report to my dad, and he'd ask for the update, and he was so proud managing the whiteboard, changing the number of how many more were to go.
Right.
And it was just an exciting day all the way around.
But none of that would happen if you hadn't had the hurricane coming in. You would have been by yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe it never would have happened because of just, you know, the circumstances.
That's very cool.
But yeah, it's interesting that $1 million day really changed a lot of people's mindsets. You know, people have compared it to like the 4-minute mile.
Right.
You know, Roger Bannister, and you know, you were telling me off camera how many people broke the 4-minute mile once he did it.
Well, somebody said 37. The real number is 24. 24 people within a year for thousands of years. This wasn't something that happened for 100 years. In the Roman times, they're trying to do a 4-minute mile. It was thought the human body couldn't physically go that fast. They would even put a guy with a rope with a bull behind him to give him extra incentive so he wouldn't get gored, and it would happen. But Roger Bannister ran that 4-minute mile by rehearsing it in his head. He could never get his body to move that fast, so in his mind he saw it over and over and over again until he got this little sense of certainty and kicked it over the edge. But the kicker is, just like you in your industry, once that happened, 24 people run a 4-minute mile within a few years, and now high school students run 4-minute miles.
Right.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
And now here, you know, filming this in 2009, 5 years later, a little less than 5 years, you know, not only is that, you know, $1 million day been done by multiple people, I've actually done it several times myself now again, but other people have gone way beyond that. You know, Frank has been involved with a massive day many times that, but it was like a huge mindset shift in people to make that happen.
So let's talk about that, because everybody has mindset, you know, people watching say, okay,
beliefs,
it's really,
like
they're going to go wonderful. You had $1 million day. Jerk, I've never even had a $10,000 day, right?
Absolutely.
So what I wanted to get across, though, is you knew exactly what you're going after. You had absolute certainty you're going to find a way to make it happen. You envisioned it.
A week before, and this is, anyone can look this up online, a week before the launch day, I registered the internet domain name milliondollarday.com.
Wow.
And it's fact. It is registered. People can go and look it up right now about what the date was when it was registered, and it would have been like August 10th, because the launch was a week later on the 17th.
So this is what we've been talking about, right?
Yeah.
You had this vision, you made it so clear and real in your mind, so certain, and then you found a way to execute, and you had some grace, right? There's a little bit of luck and a little grace involved. So it's like, what do? You have to have three things. You have to have this absolute obsession on what you want, even if it's never done before. You got to get yourself so certain. You got to secondly execute, because you still have to execute.
Right.
And then you have to have some grace, and those three things work. But I want to get across something else. Before you had $1 million day, what was like a giant peak for you? Didn't you have like $100,000?
Yeah, well, about 3 months before that.
Come sit down by the fire.
Sure, sure.
We'll sit down. I want to hear this.
So about 3 months before that,
Right?
a mutual friend of ours, Jeff Walker,
Right, I know Jeff.
who, Jeff, it's kind of a funny story because Jeff was known, Jeff orchestrates product launches. He had a lot of experience with it, more than anyone else in our industry.
Right.
And at the time, back then, Jeff was known, he was called 6 and 7. That was his little code name because he made 6 figures in 7 days.
Right.
And so I was getting ready to do a seminar, my own event. And up until this point, it's been the only one I ever did. Frank actually got me to do it.
Right.
And I never sold anything to the internet marketing market. He said, you really should just do an event. People would love to hear just you teach for a weekend. I'm like, okay, I'll do it.
Right.
So before releasing it for sale, I was talking to Jeff on the phone. We'd become friends at that time. And Jeff was sharing some principles with me on building anticipation in marketing, not just coming out with something for sale, building up to it. It's just like the music industry. When they release an album, they let you know months in advance, or a movie comes out.
Sure.
So Jeff taught me some principles about building anticipation, and so I put that into my marketing with everything else that I had kind of figured out from my own experience.
Right.
I released the seminar. And I ended up doing it was like $100,000 that was made in the first day, but it really all came in like the first 12 minutes before I took the site down.
Wow.
It wasn't going to do much more than that if I would have left it up. But so I teased Jeff. I was like, you did the 100,000 in 7 days. I did it in 12 minutes. And so, all of us are we're real good friends. It's competitive. We support each other. And, I was thrilled when Frank broke my record after I did $1 million day. And, and so we're very supportive of each other and of anyone in the industry because it doesn't take anything away from me. It's good for them. So that happened. So I had that milestone of $100,000.
And part of what drove you in each of these cases was one to set the standard higher. That's what all of you guys are doing. You
like
love
stairs.
each other.
You go higher and higher steps.
So do me a favor, because a lot of people
sure.
go, okay, you blew me away with $1 million
Right.
in less than 24 hours, 100,000 in 12 minutes.
Right.
But before you ever got there were lower stairs.
Sure.
Bring me down, because you didn't go straight to
No,
the
absolutely not.
You could do it today because you've demonstrated it, right?
Absolutely.
It's like the 4-minute mile.
Absolutely.
But where did it start even earlier for you? Before you got